You know, as great as these modelers sound, sometimes there's just no substitute for using a bona fide analog amplifier along with your modeler. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the NuX MG-30 along with an external amplifier by making use of the 4-cable method. Hey everybody, it's the Pedal Guy here. How you doing? We're all about pedal demos, pedal knowledge, and pedal sales. I love pedals, and so do you. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to set up the MG-30 with an external amp by making use of the 4-cable method. But before we get to it, if this is your first visit to my channel, take a second, click on that subscribe button down there, give me a thumbs up, help my video rank in the YouTube algorithm so I can make more content for you. Well, I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time talking about it. I'd rather just go ahead and show you. Let's get to the demo. Let's go ahead and briefly cover what the 4-cable method is all about. The 4-cable method is accomplished by making 4 connections between your guitar, the MG-30, and an external hardware amp. The first cable is from your guitar to the MG-30 input. The second cable is from the MG-30 send to your hardware preamp input. The third cable is from the AMPS send to the MG-30 return. And the fourth cable is from the MG-30 out, in this case the left or mono out, to your AMPS return. And that's exactly what we've done here by making use of my guitar, which is plugged in here, to the send, return, and output of the MG-30, connected to my hardware amp, in this case the Britwind, input, send, return, and the output here is connected to an external cabinet that's under my desk. When it comes to using the MG-30 in a 4-cable method setup, making the connections is simply the first step. The next step is selecting the output mode. And the output mode is one of 5 different modes that NuX has supplied to best use the MG-30 in a variety of different playing settings. So by default, it's already set to Studio Direct mode. But in our case today, we're going to be using it in stack front mode. So in order to access that, all you need to do is use the home/global button, press and hold, and this will get you to the global settings. Use the rotary encoder to select output mode. Just go ahead and press that, and that'll get you into output mode where you can then select anything from Studio Direct to stack rear to combo rear, stack front, combo front. In this case, we're going to be using stack front for this example. And you have 3 bands of EQ you can work with, and you also have a reset functionality here as well. So once that's done, go ahead and hit the save button, and that'll be saved with the patch. Now what those output modes do, just to be a little more precise about that, is they turn off the IR or cab signal block inside of the MG-30 because you don't need that when you're using it with a hardware amplifier. The final step we need to take here in our setup is we need to turn on the send and return. And the send and return block inside of the signal chain will essentially send any signal in any place you want along the signal block to your hardware amplifier. In order to make this concept a little easier to digest, I've gone ahead and created a special customized patch for the MG-30 to be used in a 4-cable method setup along with an external amplifier. And I've done that across 3 different scenes. The first scene is very bare bone basic where I'm simply using the amplifier of the MG-30. In this case, I'm using an AC30, a Vox AC30, and that's going off to the power amp section of my external amplifier. So I've got a nice, solid, yet basic sound. Now, in the next scene, I've gone ahead and activated a couple of effects, and I'll use the toggle foot switches here to go to those. So I've added in a delay, and I've added in a reverb. So very bare bone basic. And of course, if I want to add in other things like, let's say I want to add in an overdrive and I want to add in a little modulation. So what that does is I am now using the MG-30 specifically as a modeler and effects processor, and I'm using the external amplifier simply as a power amp. So I'm not using the preamp of the external amplifier, I'm not using the EQ section. That's going to change now because I'm going to go to the 3rd scene. And in the 3rd scene, and I'll toggle over to it here, in the 3rd scene, I'm using the send and return. And what's going on here is if I play a chord, that just sounds awful, doesn't it? And there's 2 reasons why that's happening. One is because I've got the send and return all the way at the end. So that means that anything that comes before it is now being sent out of the MG-30 to the preamp section of the external amplifier. So you're basically rubbing a preamp into a preamp, and you're gonna get a really gnarly, nasally sound. And it really is nonsensical to do that. So what I would suggest doing, and of course everybody's got their own way of doing this, but what I suggest doing is simply turning off the amplifier inside of the MG-30. And in addition to that, I now am able to use the preamp section, the EQ section of the external amplifier because I'm using the send and return. So if I want to use the overdrive of this amplifier, the external amplifier. Now you're wondering, why does it sound so boomy? Well, the reason is because the send and return is all the way at the end of the signal chain. So if I move that, let me just go ahead and get in there and let's move that before the amplifier. There it is. Now we're going to get a much different sound. Because what's happening now is the signal is going, the signal that's coming before the send and return is the overdrive, it's the noise gate, it's everything except the EQ and the reverb, which is at the end of the signal chain. So what's going on is, what's happening here, very simply put, is that the signal is going from here, from left to right. From here, it's going to the external amplifier. It's being fed back into the MG-30, and then it's continuing along the signal path here. So once it continues along the signal path, you're now getting the equalization and you're getting a reverb in there. And of course, you can add any other effects if you want to in your signal chain here. So with very little trouble and very little setup, you can get this really giant, meaty sound out of this. You just have to understand how the 4-cable method works. But once you get that under your thumbs, it's a walk in the park. Well, that concludes this video. I hope you found all of this helpful. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of things you can do with the MG-30 and a whole bunch of soundscapes and textures you can achieve by making use of the 4-cable method. So I hope you explore this a little further, and if you have further questions, use the comment section below and I'll get back to you when I can. In the meantime, have a great week.